Human instincts evolved thousands of years ago when we lived off the land as hunter-gatherers, where we took refuge in caves or in some cases jumped up into a tree for protection. Our instinctive behaviour was adapted to the times we were living in, which was often fraught with danger, as it would have been during prehistoric times. Over thousands of years, humans seem to have lost these basic instincts, which no longer seem to work in our modern man-made environments. However, one instinct that many humans still have is a sense of danger, where something will make us evade danger seconds before it happens. Some veteran soldiers in the field have often taken cover seconds before an attack, as some basic instinct had protected them. If you have a dangerous occupation such as a police officer, your natural instinct may kick in where your body is telling you that you are in danger. Whether you are a soldier or a police officer, if you've been in that field of work for many years, after a while you develop a gut feeling. Loren W. Christensen began his law enforcement career in 1967. He started as a 21-year-old military policeman in the Army, both in the United States and as a patrolman in Saigon, Vietnam, during the war. At 26, he joined the Portland, Oregon Police Bureau, where he started off on street patrol before working in other areas of the police force and retired after 25 years. Christensen had honed his gut feeling while serving in Vietnam and again while serving as a police officer on city streets. He tells the following story of what once happened to him when he was out on patrol. A typical gut feeling happened one winter, where Christensen, along with other officers, responded to an armed robbery of a veterinarian hospital. The staff, customers, and an off-duty officer were herded into a large cage. Although the off-duty officer was carrying his gun, they were able to overpower and disarm him. As they arrived at the hospital, dispatch told them 3 armed men had fled out of the back door. While one officer entered the hospital to gather information from the hostages, the other officers began to search at the back of the premises and the backyards of private residences. 3 of them searched kennels, small buildings, and behind a 6-foot-high wooden fence that surrounded the lot. Christensen's gut feeling had kicked in as he felt he was being watched, and the feeling was typical given the situation he was in. The search ended when police units on the side streets had apprehended the suspects. The suspects claimed that they'd hidden in a garage loft that overlooked the backyard of the veterinarian hospital and were able to observe the officers as they were searching for them. Christensen felt that there was nothing supernatural about the feeling of being watched, as they had been at the scene of a crime, and as they arrived at the crime scene immediately after the suspects had fled. But nevertheless, his gut was telling him to be aware of his surroundings. However, in a later situation, his gut feeling took a strange turn one sunny afternoon in August, where the feeling appeared to come out of nowhere when he stopped someone in their car. It was not the typical gut feeling that he normally experienced. It was a hot August day on a tree-lined street, and the neighbourhood was extremely quiet, and if you were not working, you were inside keeping out of the heat. Christensen said that he looked around and found there was no other traffic, and the usual barking dogs were strangely silent. Even the birds were nowhere to be seen, and they too were quiet. Everything was deathly silent. The driver they'd pulled over had sped through a stop sign, and they were pulled over outside a 2-story white house. Officer Christensen hated writing up fines and the paperwork that it involved, and preferred to give them a stern warning and to take more care on the road. The driver was not in any way aggressive and even apologised and thanked him. That's when he felt it, where his heart rate quickly accelerated, along with a tingling sensation that went up his spine. The fine hairs at the base of his neck started to bristle. Although he had previously felt the sensation while serving in Vietnam and on dangerous assignments on police jobs, such as approaching a man with a gun in a pub, he had never felt the sensation on a quiet street. He watched as the driver slowly pulled away from the curb, and as the car disappeared from sight, the feeling appeared to intensify. Christensen stood and looked around, and proceeded to scan in all directions in an effort to hone in on what was giving him the creepy feeling. He closely studied the houses all around him, but found nothing suspicious looking. So what was causing his adrenaline to spike? He was in fight or flight mode, but seeing no sign of danger, walked back to the car. But before reaching the vehicle, the feeling got worse, and his heart was now thumping. His eyes were watering, and he had goosebumps up and down his arm. What the hell was happening? All he wanted to do was jump in the car as quickly as possible. Police officers falsely regard the police car as protection from any outside danger. even though the only thing that it really protects you from is the weather, as you are actually a larger target. Nonetheless, they still take comfort when they jump inside and close the door. As Christensen jumped in the car, he quickly scanned around for possible danger, but again found nothing. It was not until he drove away from the curb that the strange sensation finally weakened. When he was 2 blocks away, he felt it was safe enough distance to pull over under the shade of a large tree and sat and composed himself, while his heart rate returned to normal, his anxiety lessened and his adrenaline mellowed. After calming down, he resumed driving and finished work 3 hours later without any further drama. The next day, his sergeant asked to speak to him after roll call. He asked him whether he had stopped the car on 63rd and Fleece Street. Then Christensen jokingly replied, "I know nothing, I was never there." When his sergeant failed to smile at his old joke, he said that he'd pulled over a guy who had sped through a stop sign, so he gave him a verbal warning. Why did the driver make a complaint about him? The sergeant then asked whether he had stopped the driver in front of a large white 2-storied house. Christensen then thought about the dreadful feeling it had in front of the house and told the sergeant that he had. The sergeant then advised him to sit down. He said that a young woman had come into the police station the previous night and said that a police officer was speaking to a driver in front of her house that day. It was at this stage that her boyfriend was observing them and had a hatred for policemen, as he was an ex-prisoner. Christensen then wondered where the conversation was going. His sergeant said that he was observing you through the window and was getting agitated. The woman said that he was going to shoot the officer and had ran to get his rifle. He then loaded his rifle and had it propped on the windowsill. As he was lining the sights ready to shoot, the woman had jumped at him in an attempt to wrestle the rifle off of him. But as they were wrestling on the floor, you had driven away, and when he had finally got the gun away from his girlfriend, he was angry that she had driven away. Because she had stopped him from shooting a police officer, he had beaten her up pretty badly. Because of that, she came into the police station to report the incident. Christensen dropped heavily onto the chair in an effort to compose himself. "That was a close one," his sergeant said as he shook his head. "You have to be careful out there. You just used up your good karma." Although Christensen's gut feeling was working overtime that day, it would not have saved him. He survived only because the girlfriend had fought off his likely killer.